Now, I'll talk about these hormones, but let's start first with the foods that I recommend for hormonal balance. We're just going to give you some foods first, and then we're going to explain it all as we go along. All right. First, you need to eat foods that are a good source of protein if you want to balance your hormones. Now, why is this? It's because proteins are made out of amino acids, and you need to put those into your body, and your body will break them down, and they will reassemble hormones out of those amino acids. So if you don't have enough, you're not going to be making proper hormones. So you need protein made of amino acids so that the body can recoup and capture those amino acids and use them to construct the hormones, the building blocks of hormones. Okay, so you want to make sure your body's stocked up. So what are some good basic sources of protein if you want to kind of make sure your body's got balance of your hormones? Well, some common good sources of protein are eggs. It's a myth that eggs aren't good for your health. Eggs, particularly organic free-range eggs, are actually really great sources of protein. And even though they have cholesterol in them, it actually helps you raise your good cholesterol. And all the studies have shown that, in fact, eating eggs in moderation actually lowers your risk of cardiovascular disease. So eggs, a good source of protein. Another good source of protein are legumes. So what are legumes? Lentils, edamame. They are great sources of legumes, all right? And then, of course, you've got your meats and fish. Fish are a great source of protein if you're a pescatarian. Always eat lower on the food chain, okay? I like swordfish, but swordfish is high on the food chain. High in the food chain means that it might actually contain heavy metals that you get from the sea, like mercury. Big fish eat smaller fish, eat smaller fish, eat smaller fish. And what they do is they're actually accumulating all the heavy metals that are found in the sea. So eating lower on the food chain is always better. Okay, now, what about meats? Turns out chicken is a pretty good source of protein, right? If you want an alternative to red meat, that's beef or even pork, chicken is actually a great alternative. Now, if you want to get the best quality chicken, try to get it free range, all right? And you want your chickens to be humanely treated. Not only is that just good practice from a humanity perspective, but also chickens that are allowed to run around in their natural environment and eat natural things are going to be better sources of the bioactives. Their protein is actually going to be a better type of protein, and they're less likely to be sick. Now, chickens also have a gut microbiome, healthy gut, and the problem is that when chickens are raised in big factories where they're put in small pens and packed next to each other, guess what? They aren't fed the right things. Their gut microbiome isn't healthy. And if the gut microbiome of a chicken isn't healthy, the chicken's not going to be healthy, and their meat isn't going to be quite as healthy as well. So basic principles, we talked about eggs, we talked about chickens, organic, free range, always going to be the best. Legumes, another good source of proteins. Okay, now, here's the thing. Eating proteins that can influence hormones can also influence and control your appetite, because one of the hormones that controls your appetite is called ghrelin. Okay, ghrelin makes you hungry, and protein also helps your body create hormones like GLP-1, and GLP-1 slows your appetite down. All right, there's another hormone called leptin that also slows your appetite down. Slowing your appetite is called satiety, and when you feel full, you're much less likely to eat or overeat a lot of food. All right, so that's actually key, because you overeat, you're going to overload your body's metabolism. You're going to overaccumulate fat, harmful body fat, and then it's going to be an inflammation, and now your hormones are going to be out of whack. So here's what you want. You want to be able to eat proteins that are building the balancing mechanisms. Okay, and this is both for men and women, but also women, we can't forget about the whole appetite issue, particularly as women get towards middle age. You want to actually make sure you're paying attention to this. Eating protein builds the hormones that allow your appetite to be balanced. Ghrelin makes you hungry. That's a hormone that requires protein. And leptin makes you full. And the hormone GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, is another hormone that actually makes you feel full. Now, by the way, if you think you've heard of GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1, that's probably because you have. GLP-1 is the natural hormone made by your body to be able to slow appetite down. It's one of the functions of GLP-1. It's got other functions as well, but GLP-1 slows your appetite down. It's kind of like a protein, a hormone that actually pushes a button that says, hey, you're a little bit full, stop eating, all right? Guess what? Those prescription weight loss drugs like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro, etc., they are what we call GLP-1 agonists. So they are kind of like GLP-1, but they push that button as well to make you full. That's one of the reasons that these prescription weight loss drugs help you lose weight. Naturally, your body's going to make these as well. So if you really want to have a balanced appetite and you're not overeating, if you overeat, you're going to tip your metabolism over, and now you're not out of balance as well. So eating protein helps build the hunger hormone and the fullness, the satiety hormone. That's what you call balance. Now, the next food I want to talk about are colorful vegetables. You've heard about this, eat the rainbow, right? Well, colorful vegetables, like I always think about sweet peppers, right? Yellow peppers, red peppers, orange peppers, green peppers. To me, that's a great example of a single food that has different colors to it. But then actually, if you think about all the other types of vegetables out there, you got your carrots and you've got your Swiss chard. They've got all kinds of different colors to them. They not only have prebiotic bioactives, polyphenols, but they also tend to have a lot of dietary fiber. So let's first talk a little bit about the colors from the polyphenols. Those prebiotic polyphenols, they feed your gut microbiome. Now, your gut microbiome, this is 39 trillion bacteria that live in your gut, healthy bacteria, okay? When I was in medical school, I was taught that must kill bacteria, bacteria are all bad. Wrong. Most of the bacteria that we encounter in our lives actually are inside our gut, and most of those bacteria are good. But you want to actually keep them happy and well fed. A good gut microbiome is like a happy neighborhood of good citizens that live together and they're productive together. They make sure everybody is safe and happy. And when you actually feed them polyphenols, some colorful vegetables, you're keeping your gut microbiome happy. Now, what's the role of the gut microbiome in hormones? We are actually just now starting to do the research to figure this out, but it's absolutely clear that a good, healthy gut microbiome is very important to keep your hormones balanced. All the hormones seem to be affected by the gut microbiome. Wherever we look, if you want to balance your hormones, you want to have a good, healthy gut microbiome. And where you find hormones out of balance, right? So you might see this in menopause. You might see this in hypothyroidism. Guess what? What we're finding is that the gut microbiome is somehow involved. That's that dastardly problem called dysbiosis. Dys meaning out of whack, biosis relating to the natural balance within the gut microbiome. So when that gut microbiome's out of balance, you wind up having problems with your hormones. So you want to actually feed that gut bacteria with colorful vegetables containing polyphenols and dietary fiber. The dietary fiber is actually the core food. Okay, if you have a pet dog, okay, this is your dog food, the dietary fiber to keep your pet dog, or in the case of your gut, your gut bacteria, happy, well-fed, and well-functioning. That's key for hormonal balance. Now, what are some of the vegetables that I really want to emphasize are really beneficial for gut health and therefore hormonal balance and health? Well, there's a whole group of vegetables you should know about called brassica, B-R-A-S-S-I-C-A, brassica. So what are some examples of these? All right, you go to the produce section and you ask the produce manager, hey, you have any brassica here? And what he or she will do is point out broccoli, broccoli rabe, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kale, and collard greens. And by the way, you can also get the sprouts from these as well. Broccoli sprouts, kale sprouts. I actually go to the farmer's market and I will often find in the springtime and broccoli sprouts or kale sprouts, which are absolutely delicious. Okay, these brassica have a lot of prebiotic polyphenols. One of them is called isothiocyanates. They are important for gut health. They're good for metabolic health, metabolic balance. And they actually help to fight harmful body fat, which lowers inflammation in your body, which then helps your hormones stay in balance as well. You see, this is actually like a complicated orchestra with a lot of different instruments. Your hormones and your organs and your cells are all kind of playing a beautiful orchestral sound. And when one instrument is out of balance, it can actually affect the other instruments as well. And so the whole piece actually sounds out of tune. And this is why you want to actually keep those hormones balanced. All right, what's another source of dietary fiber that's really good? Because brassica also have a lot of dietary fiber. But here's another food that you should know about. Mushrooms. I love mushrooms. Mushrooms, even though they're soft and wiggly when you actually cook them, they are a great source of dietary fiber, a soluble fiber called beta-D-glucan. And beta-D-glucan does a lot of things. It activates your body's health defense systems, which I wrote about in my book, Eat to Beat Disease, and also good for your metabolism, which I wrote about in Eat to Beat Your Diet. But here's the thing. The dietary fiber in mushrooms feeds your gut microbiome, better gut health, better hormonal balance. What kind of mushrooms? Well, I can tell you that even the lowly white button mushroom is beneficial. All right. But there are other culinary mushrooms that you're going to encounter very easily when you go to the grocery store, you go to the farmer's market. All right. And what are some of these things? Shiitake mushrooms, enoki mushrooms, portobello mushrooms, crimini mushrooms. These are really common. Porcini is kind of a gourmet mushroom. I love all porcini. They're absolutely delicious. And by the way, you can also get mushrooms fresh, but you can also get them dried. Because fresh mushrooms, if you have a local mushroom grower, or you can get mushrooms grown sort of in a dark place on these logs, that's one thing. You can get farmed mushrooms. But in the fall and winter, especially getting into the winter, fresh mushrooms might be hard to come by in some places. In which case, guess what? Dried mushrooms actually have the beta-D-glucan just in dried form. And in fact, arguably, if you're cooking with mushrooms, the dried mushrooms even have more potent flavor, right? So dried porcini, you can make a risotto out of that. I like to cook, so I like to talk about foods. Now, maitake mushrooms are also a kind of meaty mushroom. It doesn't have a stem. It's just kind of like this, looks like a piece of coral from a coral reef. Let's talk about mushroom parts for a second, because I think this is actually something that might be interesting and useful for you to know about. That beta-D-glucan that I talked about is present in all of the mushrooms. Now, when you actually get a mushroom, like a plain old white button mushroom, right? What do you normally do when you bring them home from the store? You clean them up. You want to clean them up, rinse them off. And what do? You cut off the stem, and you're going to cook with the top, right? Then you slice up the top, or you throw the top in. And it used to be, all right, and me too, I'd throw away the stems. But what we've done now is looked at the research to figure out where is that beta-D-glucan. So the cap, the mushroom cap, the top, it's got beta-D-glucan. It's got a lot of it, which is why we love to eat the top of the mushroom. Tasty too. But guess what? The stem of the mushroom, which is called the stipe of the mushroom, S-T-I-P-E, the stipe of the mushroom has twice as much beta-D-glucan. So if you're going to buy mushrooms, right, cook with the top, eat the top, but also save the stem and do something with the stem. If you look at cultures in Asia or cultures in the Mediterranean or in Latin American countries, they actually use every part of their food, and mushroom stems can be used to make something really delicious in a dish. If you don't know what to make with it, when in doubt, put it into a food processor and you can puree it and actually turn it into a mushroom soup, which you can then flavor up in all kinds of different healthy ways. And you'll still get the soluble fiber, the beta-D-glucan. Okay, so that's another little kind of like a pro tip when it comes to mushrooms. What about another source of dietary fiber that's actually good for your gut health, which is good for hormonal balance? Avocados. Who doesn't like an avocado, right? Like avocado toast, avocado just plain, avocado in your cut up in your salad. Avocado is actually really, really great. Avocado, even though it's kind of mushy and green, is a great source of dietary fiber. Who would have thought that, right? So your guacamole is actually quite healthy, all right? And it's got healthy fats in it as well, another benefit of avocado. Okay, so just to kind of recap, foods that are loaded with polyphenols, colorful foods, and dietary fiber are good for gut health. Good gut health, good hormonal health, helps to keep everything in balance. Now, let's talk about another category of foods that can help keep hormones in balance, and that is your omega-3 fatty acids. Sometimes they're called PUFAs, P-U-F-A. That stands for polyunsaturated fatty acid, okay? And the name is accurate. These are healthy fats. Now, you can get these healthy fats from plant-based foods, okay? You get the precursor, linoleic acid. Chia seeds have them as an example. When you eat them, your body has to convert the linoleic acid from the chia seed. It converts it into omega-3s, all right? And it's actually a useful thing if you're a vegetarian or you're a vegan to know that seeds like chia seeds can actually be a good source of omega-3s. But if you actually eat fish, that's where the most abundant omega-3s delivers it right home, right target, hits the bullseye every time is you eat seafood. Now, seafood with omega-3s used to be considered oily fish, right? I mean, how many of you have heard about eat the oily fish, mackerels and anchovies and sardines? Now, I actually happen to like all of them, but I know that many people don't really like seafood and many people don't like those kind of smaller oily fish. But I can tell you from research that I've done, and that I wrote about this in my book, Eat to Beat Your Diet, which isn't a diet book. It's actually a book that tells you how to avoid having to get on a diet. It turns out that some of the larger fish, the white flaky fish, the fish that people like, cod, haddock, are all actually really, really laden with omega-3s. In fact, you can eat just basically a playing card deck worth of cod, and you can actually get a good whopping dose of omega-3s. Now, salmon has obviously got omega-3s as well, and salmon, even though it's a little higher in the food chain, is a healthier meat because it doesn't actually tend to accumulate those high levels of heavy metals from the sea. But cod is a good substitute. A hake, as I mentioned to you, is also another white fish, very mild tasting. If you're not somebody who really likes fishy fish, try cod, try hake. These are really halibut. These are very benign fish, and actually they're quite tasty if they're cooked the right way. I always tell people, if you think you don't like seafood, really, the problem is that you just haven't had it properly prepared in a delicious way. And so give yourself a chance to enjoy seafood. Now, let's say you say, well, I like seafood, but I actually like shellfish more. I like shrimp, I like oysters, I like clams, mussels. Guess what? You are in luck, because my research has shown that even shellfish, like mussels and clams, can actually, and shrimp, have omega-3 fatty acids. So you can actually get what you need in order to be able to get those omega-3s that help to balance your hormones from shellfish as well. By the way, this also goes to octopus, to squid, to lobster. Okay, I know that most people don't eat lobster. It's a kind of expensive food. But guess what? What I'm trying to get to you is that the whole spectrum of seafood actually can give you omega-3 fatty acids, because omega-3s actually come from plankton, which are, kind of the plants of the sea, and then small fish eat them, bigger fish eat the smaller fish, and then their flesh accumulates the omega-3 fatty acids. And this goes for shellfish and shrimp as well. Now, if you totally don't like seafoods of any sort or can't get it, most people can get it. Frozen fish, by the way, is as good as fresh fish when it comes to omega-3s, and the quality of the meat as well. But you can also get omega-3s from as a supplement. So that's actually another way to get omega-3 fatty acids. All right, why am I spending all this time talking about omega-3s? Well, because omega-3s have been shown to help regulate a very important hormone in your body called cortisol. Cortisol is made by your adrenal glands, all right? And your adrenal glands are basically sort of like a sunny side up egg that's sitting on top of your kidneys. So here's your kidney, and here's the adrenal gland sitting right on top of it. Another analogy would be like an owl perching on a tree stump, or a sunny side up egg, sort of like piled on some hash browns, whatever. Okay, these are the glands that are making hormones. They sit on top of your kidneys. And when they produce cortisol, guess what? Your cortisol helps to control your metabolism. So if you're a woman and you want balanced hormones, I know that most people start talking about reproductive hormones, but I'm talking about cortisol, because cortisol needs to be balanced in order to have a balanced metabolism. And cortisol also helps to balance your blood pressure. Women, actually, especially as they get older, are prone to having high blood pressure, hypertension. Cortisol helps to regulate that. And by the way, cortisol is also important for keeping your mind sharp. Okay, cognitive function is dependent on having a good control of cortisol. Now, you don't want too much cortisol, all right? If you have overdrive of any hormone, the functions of your organ go into overdrive. So you don't want too much cortisol, or your metabolism goes on overdrive, your blood pressure soars, and you can actually get mentally anxious as well. But if you have too little cortisol, if you're short on cortisol, then you're listless and your blood pressure bottoms out. Okay, so again, this is why balance is really important. You want just the right amount, and your body knows how to do this, but omega-3s is one of those substances, dietary factors from seafood or chia seeds and some plant-based foods that allow you to have that healthy hormonal balance. Now, one thing that also has omega-3s, seaweed. If you ever go to a sushi restaurant, go to the sushi bar, they might have on the menu a seaweed salad. That's called wakame, and that actually contains omega-3s. So order a seaweed salad with a little bit of sesame oil and sesame seeds on it. And the other thing is kelp. Kelp is sort of the big, thick, slippery seaweed. If you've ever gone to a beach and you see this big, gigantic leaves sitting on, dark-colored leaves sitting on the sand, they're pretty slippery. That's kelp. And kelp is also a good source of omega-3s. So you're like, I'm not going to be eating that off the beach. Well, actually, if you go get miso soup in a Japanese restaurant, okay, the little bowl of soup they serve you, so you get a little bit of tofu in it. It's a broth. It will have a little black square that is kelp. All right, if you go to an Asian store, you'll see that dried, and you can actually tear a page off the sushi restaurant playbook and you can cut it up and soak it up and cook it into a soup yourself. And guess what? That contributes omega-3 fatty acids to you. Let's now talk about your thyroid, because many people actually have thyroid issues. And your thyroid, first of all, what is your thyroid? It's a gland. It's a gland that makes thyroid hormone, right? So glands are the organs in your body that make hormones. So where's your thyroid located? Well, it's actually right above the notch of your collarbone, right between your collarbone, and it kind of is like a butterfly around your neck. When doctors are trained to do a thyroid exam, we're told to actually use both hands and feel around the neck, which is what your doctor does on a good physical exam. The thyroid looks like a butterfly. It's got two wings on each side, and it makes thyroid hormone. So what does thyroid hormone do? It controls your metabolism. So you want to have good thyroid hormone in order to have good balanced metabolism. Thyroid hormone also controls your energy levels. And thyroid hormone also controls your weight, whether you gain weight, lose weight, or keep it absolutely steady. Thyroid hormone also controls your heart, the rate of your heartbeat, how fast and strong your bones grow. And thyroid hormone also helps your body generate heat. So if you feel warm or you feel cold, that's all due to whether or not your thyroid hormone is actually doing its job and balance. Now, what happens if you have too much thyroid hormone? Well, guess what? That's called hyperthyroidism. And what are you going to do? You're going to feel really hot and sweaty. Heat generation goes way up. And if you're low in thyroid hormone, you're going to feel cold and you're going to lack energy. Again, I'm telling you this because this is why hormones need to be balanced. All right. So what foods are good for hormonal health? Well, answer is pretty simple. You want foods with iodine. Iodine is an element, all right, in the environment, and your thyroid needs the iodine in order to be able to function properly. What's a source of iodine? Well, seaweed. We talked about kelp, and we talked about wakame. Any type of seaweed is actually a good source of iodine. If you want to find seaweed, you can just go to the Asian store. They usually have a section where they've got packaged dried sheets of seaweed. And just go onto YouTube and look up seaweed recipe, soup. Seaweed's great to actually use in soup, but you can use it to cook in other ways as well. By the way, if you like, go to a sushi restaurant and you like rolls, right? The maki rolls, guess what? That black skin around the roll is seaweed. It's pretty easy to actually make your own maki rolls. All you need is this kind of a maki roll maker, which you just roll the sheet up with. So you put a sheet of the seaweed on top of the roll, then you put some rice on top of it, then you put, whatever, cucumbers for the California roll or anything else, tuna, if you would cut up the tuna or shrimp, and then you roll it up. It's actually fun to make, tasty, and a way to get your seaweed into your system that has iodine, which is actually healthy for your thyroid hormone, for thyroid balance, for balanced hormones. Now, seafood in general, like fish, also has iodine because the sea has iodine. And there are kinds of salts that you can buy in a grocery store. If you look on the side of the package of the salt, it'll say fortified with iodine. Check the label, see if your salt that you might get at the grocery store has iodine in it. Now, what about some other unusual or surprising sources of iodine? Guess what? Yogurt can also contain iodine. Yogurt, probiotic food, good for gut health, but often it contains iodine. You know why? Because the cows that produce the milk used to make yogurt are fed iodine in order to keep the thyroid glands of the cows healthy, right? It's, that whole thing of you are what you eat. Well, you are what your food actually eats as well. And when cows are fed iodine to make a healthy cow to produce healthy milk, and that healthy cow making healthy milk is actually made to use yogurt, you get a little bit of iodine. So that's a little bit of a surprising source of iodine. Brazil nuts, that's a tree nut. Also good for the thyroid. It actually contains an element called selenium, which is a trace metal that your thyroid uses to keep things in balance as well. All right. So selenium also good for the thyroid. Brazil nuts, a good source for that. All right. I know I'm going through a lot of information on a lot of hormones and a lot of foods, but look, we're going to be talking about a lot of complexity whenever you talk about balancing the hormones. Remember, there's more than 50 hormones in the body, and I'm not going to go through all 50, don't worry, but I'm going to talk about the ones that you're most likely have heard of and ones that are most likely the ones that you want to prioritize when it comes to food as medicine to be balanced in your body. I can't talk about hormones without mentioning insulin. And I know a lot has been made out of glucose spikes and insulin, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not going to go into glucose spikes, but let me just tell you, insulin is a hormone that is made to help regulate your metabolism. how much energy you actually have in your body. And we all want to have energy. So where is insulin made? Insulin is made by an organ in your belly called the pancreas. And the pancreas is made of different kinds of cells. There's a special kind of cell in the pancreas called the beta islet cell. All right. And when those beta islet cells are working well, they make insulin whenever you're actually eating or thinking about eating. And when food enters your body, okay, especially glucose, your insulin is released and it is just ready to help your muscles and your adipocytes, these are fat cells, absorb the blood sugar so that it's regulating how much sugar is floating around your bloodstream. And guess what? That sugar is fuel, and that fuel actually gives you energy. So that's how our body stores energy as we're eating, is that insulin, the hormone that needs to be balanced, by the way, has got to actually, is critical in order to make sure that we're getting good energy balance. What happens if you have too little insulin? Well, guess what? Your sugar doesn't get absorbed and it builds up in the blood. Okay, too little insulin, not enough pull the sugar into your muscles and into your body fat. And now the blood sugar is just building up. And the more you eat, the higher the sugar levels go. All right. And when sugar builds up in your blood, you have high blood glucose. It's not a spike. It's just kind of like a bathtub that the water is overflowing. There's up. And now it's going to spill over the sides. And this is actually called type 1 diabetes or insulin dependent diabetes. All right. That's when you don't have enough insulin. Now, too much insulin is also bad for you. Now, when do you have too much insulin? Well, this can actually happen in type 2 diabetes, type 2 or adult onset diabetes. Well, this is actually what happens when your body's making insulin, but your muscles aren't actually responding to the insulin. So it's out there, but the machine that actually absorbs the energy, the fuel, isn't working properly. It's like if you were at the filling station trying to pump gas into your car and there's a blockage in your fuel tank, right? The nozzle can't quite spray the gas in. And now your pancreas is saying, oh, we're not getting enough blood sugar into our muscles and to our body. Let's go ahead and make more insulin. Maybe that's the problem. And so then in type 2 diabetes, not only are you not absorbing the blood sugar, but you're also making more insulin. And when you pump out more insulin, levels go up, and too much insulin is also bad. You know why? Because in order to make more and more and more insulin, your body has to really ratchet up a growth hormone called insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1. Insulin growth factor, listen, this is actually the growth factor that helps your body make insulin. When you need to make more, you need insulin, you need more IGF-1. And here's the problem. You need a little IGF-1 to be healthy, but too much IGF-1, meaning your body says, I'm not getting a blood glucose, I'm making more insulin. That's type 2 diabetes. More insulin, still not getting enough sugar, more insulin. Now, to keep on making more and more and more insulin, your body's cranking out the IGF-1, and too much IGF-1 is associated with more mortality from all kinds of causes. And IGF-1 is even linked to cancer development. In the lab, if you expose a tumor cell, a cancer cell, IGF-1, it just goes wild. It loves the IGF-1. It goes crazy. And so that's why we actually really want to be able to control IGF-1. And that's why having runaway type 2 diabetes is not healthy at all. Okay. So how do you actually get balance of your insulin? Well, you want to actually make sure that you're not overeating and that you're also eating the right amounts of food. So not overeating. I always talk about harahachi banh mi. Harahachi banh mi is a Confucian saying that says, stop eating when you're about 80% full. If you eat slowly, and a good way to eat slowly is to eat with a company, hopefully somebody you like, having conversation, you're eating more slowly, your body will signal to you as your stomach is filling up. Your stomach will release hormones that tell your brain that, hey, listen, slow down. You're actually getting full now. And so you want to actually eat slowly, stop when you're 80% full, and whatever you're eating, make sure that actually it's mostly plant-based, right? You're not eating added sugars like sodas, you're not eating too many cakes and candies and cookies. All that stuff is just like pure sugar, like entering your body. Look, that's going to put a strain on your body as well. So you want to eat moderately, okay, 80% full. You don't want to overeat. You want to eat healthy things, and you want to cut down or cut out some of the ultra-processed foods that have been associated with type 2 diabetes. Ultra-processed things in a box or a bag, made from a factory that your grandmother wouldn't recognize as food. More importantly, if you take a look, the telltale signs of an ultra-processed food that might not be good for your insulin regulation, your balanced insulin, all right, is if you take a look at the ingredient label and you see all these ingredients, like 20 some ingredients, most of which you can't pronounce, and you have no idea what they're actually doing in the food. It's not something you would put if you're cooking in the kitchen. Those artificial chemicals, artificial flavoring, artificial coloring, artificial preservatives, you get the drift here. Those are actually bad for your metabolism, and they also damage your gut microbiome. So gut health also helps your body absorb that glucose. So you want to actually eat plant-based foods that have got polyphenols, as we talked about, and dietary fiber that will actually be helpful to gut health, which will then ultimately help balance your metabolism and help balance your insulin as well. Now, I want to talk about your brain. Your brain makes a hormone called oxytocin. What's oxytocin? It's a social hormone. What's a social hormone? Well, social hormone is what your brain produces when you are in social company and you want to feel good, right? So you know what it feels like if you're waiting for at the airport in the arrivals for somebody you haven't seen in a long time, friend, relative, lover, what have you, and you see them, and all of a sudden you run up to them, you give a big hug, right? And you feel great. And that's because your brain is releasing oxytocin. It's a bonding hormone. Moms also release oxytocin a lot into their breast milk when they're breastfeeding their baby. This actually, the baby gets some oxytocin, the mom has oxytocin. It bonds mom and baby. It's a social hormone. By the way, it's also a hormone that your brain releases when you get a kiss. Not a peck on the lips, but actually a deep French kiss. And oxytocin also comes out of your brain when you're having an orgasm, all right? This is a very, very important hormone. So neurotransmitter made by the brain. And guess what? That hormone, that social hormone, which you want to have some of it around, okay, when you need to, especially when you need to, is controlled from gut bacteria. There's one gut bacteria called Lactobacillus reuteri. Reuteri is spelled R-E-U-T-E-R-I. Lactobacillus, which is an important class of healthy bacteria. Reuteri is exactly what it is. The Lactobacillus is the first name. Reuteri is the last name. Honestly, it's genus and species. But research in the lab has found that when you have Lactobacillus reuteri, even in drinking water, okay, you're in the lab. So you have rats drinking their drinking bottle. Guess what? That actually helps the brain produce and release oxytocin. This is a study that's been done at MIT. Now, Lactobacillus is bacteria, so you can also find it in foods. So probiotic foods. So what's an example of a probiotic food with Lactobacillus reuteri? That's good for brain health. That actually helps your brain release social hormones. Guess what? Parmigiano Reggiano cheese. Now, I'm not talking about the fake Parmesan. I'm talking about the real deal, the OG. The Parmigiano Reggiano you can actually buy from Italy, or it's imported from Italy. And, it comes in these gigantic discs. They're really hard and really heavy. They're monsters, like the size of a car tire. All right. And the cheese sellers like to cut them into pieces. And I can tell you, as somebody who loves to cook and loves to use Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, and I've also done research in Italy on this, it's kind of grainy, it's a little crunchy, it's got this incredible umami flavor. The starter bacteria for Parmigiano Reggiano in Italy is Lactobacillus reuteri. So it's a probiotic cheese. Now, I'm not telling you to eat a lot of cheese. It has a lot of salt, it has a lot of saturated fat, but it is probiotic. So if you want to have an excuse to get some Lactobacillus reuteri to really help support your brain health with your social hormones, L. reuteri is actually found in cheese. There's another food that actually can have Lactobacillus reuteri, sourdough bread. Because guess what? The sour or the tanginess of sourdough bread comes from Lactobacillus reuteri. Lactobacillus, bacillus is the bacteria that makes lactic acid. Lactic acid is what gives sourdough the tang, right? Most people love sourdough bread. And it's actually the healthiest bread to actually have. Now, like anything, you don't want to have too much of it, but Lactobacillus reuteri is the original starter used to make sourdough bread. And in fact, sourdough bread has been made by, generations after generation after generation after generation of bakers. And it turns out that the starter material of Lactobacillus reuteri has been passed down over generations of bakers. So if you're going to get sourdough bread, make sure you get the real sourdough bread. Some factories that make sourdough bread, you know what they do to make their bread taste tangy? You just put a little vinegar in there. That's cheating, and it doesn't actually have the probiotic benefits. Yogurt can also have Lactobacillus reuteri as well. You have to look that up for whatever yogurt product you're actually getting to see what kind of bacteria it actually contains. Now, there's an interesting beneficial side effect of Lactobacillus reuteri. Beneficial side effect. Side effects aren't always bad. Sometimes side effects are actually really good. In this case, for Lactobacillus reuteri, guess what? Lactobacillus reuteri helps kill the bacteria in your mouth that causes cavities and causes gum disease. So if you're going to get Lactobacillus reuteri, which you can actually get as a dietary supplement, I always get the chewable version. This is like a pro tip. The chewable version, I'll actually chew it, chew. Then you swish it around a little bit, then swallow it. First, I've actually treated my mouth, my oral health, my mouth microbiome with a cavity bacteria killing probiotic. I mean, how good is that? Like, nobody would actually not want to have that. Then you swallow, it goes down to your lower gut. Now you've actually armed your lower gut. That lower gut text messages your brain to release oxytocin. You get the benefit, okay? Now, I want to talk a little bit about women who are going through menopause. Menopause is actually this kind of change in life, usually around middle age, 40, 45, sometimes earlier, sometimes later. It can last a few years, but it can even last more than a decade. And researchers are looking at what types of foods are helpful to ameliorate, to relieve women with some of the symptoms of menopause. So, I mean, some of these symptoms are hot flashes, anxiety, discomfort, pain. So all kinds of things that are associated, not so good things, associated with menopause. So I want to explain a little bit of why it's important to balance hormones or counterbalance your hormones when you're in menopause. So let's first talk about those reproductive hormones that go down when you have menopause. Estrogen and progesterone are reproductive hormones. Now, estrogen is made by ovaries. Estrogen is made especially during puberty. It's responsible for breast development, ovulation. Ovulation is really their ovaries kicking out an egg so it can be fertilized for pregnancy. And estrogen is also important for menstruation. All right, you want to actually get ready for the next cycle. Estrogen is involved with that. If you actually have too much estrogen out of balance, you have menstrual problems. You can have a lot of anxiety. You can have a decreased sex drive. You can have depression. So too much estrogen is actually problematic. Now, you want to have balance. Progesterone is another sex hormone made by, not the ovaries, but the adrenal glands. Remember we talked about the adrenal glands? That's the sunny side up egg sitting on a mound of hash browns, or I said also an owl sitting on a tree stump. All right, you got the owl sitting on a tree stump. That's your adrenal gland. All right, so you want those to be in balance. Now, progesterone is also made by a little bit in the ovaries, and in the men, it's also made in testicles as well. What progesterone does is actually it helps to prepare the womb for pregnancy. It's sometimes called the pregnancy hormone. If you have too little progesterone, it's going to be hard to get pregnant. In fact, it often can lead to miscarriage. Now, if you got too much progesterone, guess what? That's been linked to breast cancer as well. So you want really good balance. You don't want too much. You don't want too little. So, I used to call that the Goldilocks zone. And not too hot, not too cold, not too hard, not too soft, just right. Estrogen and progesterone, you want them to do their thing in their right balance, okay? Now, during menopause, all right, in women, when their reproductive age is done, you've had all your kids, or you've never had kids, it's time to slow down and quit that business, all right? Your levels of estrogen and progesterone go way down. And guess what? When your estrogen levels go way down, it causes your bone density to decrease. When bone density decreases, your bones become brittle. That's called osteoporosis. You've probably heard of that. That's actually more common. It's common. It can happen in any woman, but it's even more common in women like Asian women who have small bones that become really brittle, like bird bones. All right. Too little estrogen also causes mood disorders, depression, anxiety. Can go both ways. All right. And too little estrogen causes hot flashes. Talk to any woman who has either gone through menopause or is going through menopause and ask her what she thinks about hot flashes. And she'll probably tell you it is one of the most bothersome, disturbing symptoms of undergoing menopause. So a hot flash is where you'll be sitting there perfectly fine. And because your hormones are out of balance, suddenly you feel this huge flush in your body, your temperature goes way up, you start sweating. It's very, very uncomfortable. For no apparent reason, your body goes into a hot flash, all right? And it can last for minutes, it can last for even a little bit longer, and it feels like something's wrong with your body. For a long time, we didn't know what causes the hot flash, but now we know it's like your hormones out of balance, which is the whole purpose of this video. We're going to talk about how you balance your hormones. When your estrogen is out of balance, all right, it changes the thermostat that's in a brain of a woman. Now, our brains contain a thermostat, all right, in the hypothalamus. That's like a kind of control center of your brain. It's like the dashboard of your brain. And when estrogen goes way low and your hormones are out of balance, that thermostat doesn't know how to readjust itself. In fact, it normally has a pretty good range. You know, you can go up and down, and you're fine. Your body knows how to control good temperature on a hot day and a cold day. But during menopause, because the hormones are out of balance, your thermostat goes from a comfortable range to a really, really narrow range. And when it's dealing with a narrow range, it's really hard to adjust. You know, like when you're playing with the volume of something and it's like too soft and you turn it and boom, it goes too loud. Oh, too loud, you turn it down. Now it goes suddenly too soft. That's basically the equivalent in temperature of hot flash when you've got a volume control switch, like on a radio, that you actually can't control properly. So that's what we think is going on with menopause and hot flashes, is that the temperature control system in your brain, the thermostat of your brain, goes from being wide and normal, like most of a woman's life, to suddenly become narrow. And the body doesn't know how to operate within that narrow range. It overcorrects or undercorrects, and you get these hot flashes, all right, even at regular temperatures. No apparent reason whatsoever. Another consequence of our hormones out of balance are sleep disturbances, right? Women who are undergoing menopause, they have a hard time sleeping. Now, hot flashes can wake them up. That's a problem as well. And as you probably know, we should be getting 8 hours of good sleep. Now, what happens? Because when you're sleeping really well for 8 hours, your metabolism is doing its thing. It actually burns down excess body fat. The other thing that's happening when you're sleeping is your gut microbiome reboots itself. Your immune system actually starts to reset and strengthen itself up. Your brain also clears toxins that have accumulated during the day through a special sewer system called glymphatic channels. Glymphatic, glymphatic system. It's like the sewer systems of power, so except they're in your brain. They open up only when you're sleeping in good deep sleep to drain all those toxins. You don't get good sleep, guess what? You get brain fog. You know why? Because you haven't drained those toxins. And this is actually what happens during menopause when hormones are out of balance and you aren't able to control your temperature and you wind up having sleep disturbances. It is a real problem. Okay, so the holy grail for women who are going through menopause is finding something that can help them control their hormone levels. So estrogen replacement therapy or hormone replacement therapy, HRT, is something that medical doctors actually recommend to women who have real difficulty with their symptoms, right? It can drive somebody crazy, right? So you want to actually talk to your doctor if you're having severe menopause syndrome. And HRT actually is about trying to help your body get a little bit better in control of balance. So that could be really important for your quality of life and ultimately for things like osteoporosis as well. You should always talk to your doctor about what the pluses and minuses and what are the cautions of the estrogen, the hormone replacements that are being used. But when it comes to food as medicine, clinical studies have shown that women who are undergoing menopause, the women who eat more fruits and vegetables, more polyphenols, get more dietary fiber, have better gut health, all right, better gut microbiome, they tend to have fewer menopausal symptoms, and their symptoms tend to be less severe as well. So another argument for eating produce, plant-based foods, eating, specifically thinking about your gut microbiome, which reduces inflammation, which text messages your brain, lowers anxiety, better social hormones, all kinds of good with that. So that's what clinical research has been showing so far for women who are undergoing menopause. Polyphenols, dietary fiber, good for menopause. A couple of other things, nutrients that might be helpful for women who are experiencing menopause to try to compensate or counter the imbalances in their hormones. Vitamin D. Vitamin D has been shown to be helpful through clinical studies with women who experience menopause. Where do you get vitamin D in your food? Mushrooms, yogurt, salmon's a good source of vitamin D, some vitamin D, and eggs. Eggs can have vitamin D as well. Now, this vitamin D helps to build bones, right? Remember I told you, low estrogen, your bones get weak, osteoporosis, Vitamin D can counter that. That's actually balancing things at the end, sort of at the outcome level, right? So not treating the root cause, but actually trying to counter some of the side effects that can happen with this hormonal imbalance. Look, all women who are undergoing menopause are at risk. So vitamin D is helpful. Come back to omega-3s. Remember, we talked about this earlier. Omega-3s are very, very helpful to balance your hormones. Well, in women undergoing menopause, omega-3s seem to be pretty important. They actually help to promote healthy blood vessels, which I study. And why do you need to actually get better blood vessels? Well, women after menopause are at higher risk for cardiovascular, heart, brain, and blood vessel diseases. And so you want to be able to make sure you've got good, healthy blood vessels, right? So this is, again, food that's a counter to some of the side effects that come out with menopause. We talked about this, oily fish and not so oily fish like salmon and cod, shellfish, mussels, clams, shrimp, lobster. By the way, if you're a woman experiencing menopause, go ahead, live it up. You deserve it for your heart health. Go ahead and have yourself some lobster. It's got omega-3s, going to be good for you. Okay. Now, here's another food that's been shown to help women experience fewer and milder menopausal symptoms, and that's whole grains, right? Whole grain bread, whole grain pasta, whole grains, for your cereal. Good for you. That's actually another thing that you can actually add to your shopping list is foods made with whole grains. All right. Now, here's the other thing, another counter. Now we're talking about countering this hormone imbalance. Protein. We started this video talking about the benefits of protein because hormones are made with protein. But guess what? When your estrogen actually goes down, your in a woman's body, the maintenance of muscle isn't quite as good as before menopause. So you can start to lose muscle mass, lose strength, and you need to eat protein in order to have those amino acids to build muscle mass. So you want to actually make sure you're countering the loss of muscle mass during menopause by having more protein. Obviously, you need to stay physically active and exercise as well. So that's another important thing. Very rarely is food as medicine like a standalone. Like you could be a couch potato. You need to do anything. You don't need to sleep. Just eat the healthy food. Nope. It's actually the whole package. You want to eat healthy. You want to sleep well. You want to stay physically active and you want to manage your stress. But you do want to maintain your protein intake. So what are some proteins that come from plants? We talked about some of these before. Soy, lentils, beans. I like white beans. For some reason, I just like white bean soup, white bean stews. I like them, but all beans are really good. Black beans, pinto beans, kidney beans. They're a beneficial source of protein. They're good for women who are undergoing menopause. Now, another good source of building block foods for your body to strengthen your muscles and your joints is collagen. Collagen is actually a type of protein that's beneficial. And when you actually have collagen, the collagen that you eat goes into your stomach acid digests it. And then these little fragments of cut up collagen, because the acid digests it, go into your bloodstream. And these collagen fragments actually activate biological systems in your body. They turn on your cells to be able to lower inflammation, but also to build better joints by connective tissue in your body as well. Another source of collagen, besides, you can eat meat that contains a collagen, like beef tendon, but you can also have bone broth is another good source, and gelatin as well. You're going to eat Jell-O, by the way. We all ate Jell-O when we were kids, right? That bright green fluorescent stuff or the red stuff. Just get plain. Don't have anything added to it. You don't want artificial coloring. You don't want artificial flavoring. We were fooled when we were kids. Like that, all that stuff was artificial stuff. But you can flavor gelatin yourself with fresh, ripe fruit, just whatever the season is. If it's the summertime, use fresh ripe peaches or strawberries. If it's wintertime, you can actually use citrus. You can actually make your own flavored gelatin, and that's a good source of protein through the collagen. Also good for your joints as well. All right, so I want to just close by talking about some of the foods that you want to limit if you're a woman undergoing menopause. So you want to actually reduce your symptom, how bad it can be. You want to limit these things. You want to limit alcohol. You know why? Alcohol can cause cortisol to be released. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Stress hormones in excess strain your blood vessels. It affects your circulation, and actually can up your blood pressure as well. You want to cut down or cut out ultra-processed foods. Now, I know for a fact you've heard about ultra-processed foods. It's in the news everywhere. All the research shows us that eating a lot of ultra-processed foods in a box, in a can, foods made out of a factory, foods with 20 ingredients, you can't pronounce them, you have no idea what those ingredients do, you would never put them in food in your own kitchen. Ultra-processed food often has artificial preservatives, artificial coloring, artificial flavoring, okay? And guess what? It's been shown that those hurt your gut microbiome. Now, one of the themes I've talked about the entire time for hormonal balance is to make sure you've got a good, healthy gut microbiome. Your gut microbiome is one of your body's health defense systems. So when you eat a lot of ultra-processed foods and you're a woman in menopause, you affect your gut microbiome. Guess what? Now all of your hormones start to go out of whack. So not only are estrogen and progesterone out of whack,